Welcome to Mac and Blue, where we introduce you to who is building Arizona, bringing you the people and businesses that shape the landscape around us. From economic development and developers, underwriters and lenders, architects and engineers, to the very builders and suppliers that bring it all together. Now let's join our hosts, Robert Johnson and JJ Levensky, aka Mac and Blue.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mac and Blue Podcast. It's JJ Levinsky, your host, president and co-founder of Blue Wave General Contracting. Today, I'm going to do really good to pronounce this correctly. Today, my and our esteemed guest is Dustin Giannangelo. And as you can tell, he's a Polak just like myself. Just kidding. Dustin is the CEO of Fusion Wealth Management. And I was lucky enough to meet him quite a few years ago. And I thought it would be perfect to get Dustin on because in the ethos and of what we're doing with building Arizona, there isn't anyone in the AEC construction space that doesn't need advice on wealth management. And I can tell you once we get into more of the nuts and bolts of the conversation today that I've always respected how Dustin looks at things maybe a little differently. So in other words, if I think about how I love the black sheep of the construction space. I'm not saying you're the black sheep of the wealth management space, but I like your unconventional thinking. So hopefully we explore a little bit of that today. So welcome, Dustin.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
But to warm you up to the audience and vice versa, let's get to know a little bit about you. So where did you grow up and born and raised and all that kind of stuff?
Born and raised in Arizona.
He's a local.
I know. I was so local. I had to get out for a few years. Went to Minnesota for school. Came back. 3 kids. Later now here in Arizona, I'm just nonstop. But I think the big thing when you think about the Valley, the time I went away to Minnesota to actually go to college and then come back, it's just amazing to see the growth of the Valley, and it's been fun. It's been fun to see on the construction side, what's happened over the last 10, 12 years in the boom and everything in between. But yeah, it's been a blast. I'm never going to be cold again. Let's just put it that way.
And for those of you that are watching, this sharp-dressed guy, you know how he went to Minnesota? Because he went on a baseball scholarship. So the guy's an athlete too. Or maybe it was badminton. I don't know. But he either lied about it or he's a good sell.
Yeah. Well, that was the one thing. It was too beautiful. It was too sunny here. And, why you can play year-round, baseball here. Why not go to Minnesota where you can't do that and you can freeze? So
I remember when I first met you, I'm like, hold it. I'm the Minnesota guy coming to Arizona. What in the hell were you thinking going that way?
Well, I still remember my first game I ever played in. It was flirting. And I asked myself, what am I doing? What am I doing here?
Was the Metrodome still there when you went to school?
It was.
Okay.
Yeah, the old school turf. That was fun. But yeah, I got to learn what it's like to truly be cold, truly you see snow and baseball at the same time. I never thought I would see that. But, it was a great experience. I'm glad I did it. But again, unless it's recreation snow, I'm just never going to be cold again. So
did you came back here and went to school though, right?
Yeah, my last year I finished up at ASU.
Okay, but was it a finance background or what did you do?
Yeah, so I was finance and history, actually a combination of both. So
wow.
Yeah.
Now, so then after college, did you jump right into investment, finance, wealth management, or what was your grooming period?
Yeah, I think it's important to say, not even so much what I do, but why I do it.
Yeah.
So you talked about the baseball. Yeah, I was well regarded coming out of high school for baseball. Again, I chose to go to the tundra, as I called it, the Northland. Again, love it. It was a great experience. But during that time, I had what I didn't know. There was kind of some family rift between my mother and my father at that point.
Okay.
And again, really important to sell the story why I actually do what I do.
Did you come from a big family?
No.
Oh.
So no family. Looked up to my father more than anything in the world. Mom and dad ended up getting a divorce.
Oh.
Dad walks out. Mom, he decides, hey, you need to stay there. It was kind of at a crossroads. Should I come back and finish up? That's how I came back from Minnesota.
Oh.
Should I come back, and be with the family, help the family out, or should I stay and play baseball? My mother did everything she could to get me to go and stay there. But that crossroads was really like I came back, worked full-time, 100% in school as well, did double classes, got done in a year and a half while working.
Overachiever.
But, but what it really taught me is what I really wanted to do and why I do what I do is that I never wanted another family to feel the way I felt about the finance. Because that's really what it was about. Like, our family was completely broken because of the financial aspect of it.
Wow.
So it really drove me to come into this business in the wealth management. Again, never having a family member or a family be broken up because of wealth or having these discussions. So it drove me to unrelenting, drive to make sure that I could build something. And it wasn't easy. I came in 07, a year later, 08. A lot of your listeners will probably understand what the complexity of that was, especially on the construction side. But the whole market, the economy blew up. I almost got bounced out of the business because it was just everything was failing. But I really started to build a name in the community in the entrepreneur side and the executive side, and been thriving ever since.
So, just for me and the listeners' edification, you started your own shop right out of college too, or did you like? Forgive me. Did you go to like, Edward Jones or any of those kind of conventional things to get some grooming first?
I was with a company called New England Financial.
Okay.
So it was an independent financial company. And there was a couple people that I worked with, kind of sort of mentors in there. But I was really on my own for the most part. So
wow. So you had to build a book of business right out of the gate and everything.
Right out of the gate. And the second worst crash in United States history, no one wanted to talk about anything finance or anything else like that. So yeah, it was probably the worst time that you probably would want to, do that. So I learned a lot about myself, about perseverance and, building quality relationships and building a name at that point. So it was interesting, but I'm glad I went through it because it really firebranded me for where I am today.
Again, before we get into all the nuts and bolts of the cool stuff you do, is for those of you that can't tell, Dustin's driven. I think that's an understatement. But what do you do for fun?
There's such a thing. Well, I have 3 kids. So, my life really revolves around business and then spending time with the family. So just like, I did, my boys love baseball. So, there's not a day that goes by that we don't do something in the backyard, some type of, fun event, and weekends are comprised of, just hanging out with them. So
Good.
It's kind of my checking off time that, my brain is always thinking, no matter what. I'm always thinking about business, but they really pull me away from that. And that's good because you really need that.
All right, so the unconventional and all the cool things about what you do. So paint a picture for the audience's sake of, let's not bastardize it, but when you got into the business and when you started all those things and you wanted to maybe do, your own value proposition, your ad, what were the things that you saw in wealth management or investment, advising or whatever you want to call it, that you didn't want to emulate or you didn't want to repeat from the, let's call it the big monetized shops?
Mm-hmm. I think being an entrepreneur is something that's very unique in our industry. If you look at our industry as a whole, you're kind of an accidental entrepreneur. Really what it is.
I like that one.
They're advisors who came in, or wealth managers that wanted to be, to do that. And all of a sudden you start growing and you have all these other things like payroll, and it becomes this thing where you're just like, well, should I continue to grow or should I just stay really small and not have to deal with that? I've always been an entrepreneur. I always wanted to continue to grow and, reach different levels of success. So taking an entrepreneur mindset has really, I think, brought what I've done to the next level and some of the things I've built. Thinking about things like brand promises, right?
What do you mean by that?
So brand promise. Let's take an example like a Build Direct, right? Materials company. They talk about product excellence. The way they look is one of their brand promises. Exceptional customer service and best price, right? What are yours? What you got to start with what that brand promise is and figuring out. 2 of ours are we treat you like family and access to our Fusion family office. Those are 2 big brand promises. But if you take that to the next level and you start thinking really like an entrepreneur about the wealth management business, well, okay, great. Well, what's your differentiating activities, right? And you think about I think the emulation is not so much about the wealth management industry, but emulating other companies and how to bring that to the wealth management front. So Build Direct, for example, why are they been successful? What are their differentiating activities? Well, if you want to buy through them, you have to buy at least a pallet of material. You have to pay cash in advance, right? 2 things that, again, it's not a normal thing. When you look at, they don't use brand names, right? They have a distribution of a bunch of small manufacturers with outstanding product, therefore living up to their brand promises of keeping, costs down. So again, structuring the company in that way as well. What are the brand promises? What are our differentiating activities? What are our multiplying factors as well, comparison to the industry? And what we have a little thing, one of our values is demand excellence in our company, which really means we break stuff constantly. break. So our processes, our operations, we're always trying to break them to become better. And that's that trailblazing mindset that we have, and just constantly breaking things. And if I create something in the company, a process or operations, whether it's engaging with a client or investment management or financial planning, somebody's always trying to break that. I'm okay with that because that creates that innovation that we're always looking for.
What led you to that humility, if you will? Or because it takes a special person to realize to go to their uncomfort zone to be comfortable, right?
Mm-hmm.
What led you to that?
It's our values. It's one of our values as a company.
But I'm saying your background. What led you to be that comfortable being?
Well, when you think about baseball, right?
Yeah.
It's really, if you go 3 for 10, meaning you 70% failure rate, you're in the Hall of Fame. So I'm very humbled in the fact that if you get it right over time.
So baseball, I love it.
It all comes back.
They
to
got
that.
you weren't a hockey guy when I asked about taking a slap shot to the forehead or something.
Right. Well, I think it really ties into a lot of that. You think about, for me personally, just my story on the baseball side. It's very team centric. That's why I talked about building the core values off that, building my team that way. It's really the I think that compounds over life, work ethic across the board. But you got to have that humility in business, because if you don't, you're never going to grow to where you want. I mean, 4% of companies actually reach 1 million or more in revenue. Okay, that means 96% of companies never get above $1 million in revenue. Okay, 10 million plus in revenue is 0.4. So if you really wanted to scale up,
That's real.
that's real. 0.4% of companies only make 10 million or more.
That shocks me.
So if you think about, again, when you think you have a 96% chance that you're going to stay small, and maybe that's okay, maybe that's what you want.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But if that's not what your drive is, you need to think out how to do other ways. And if you're not innovating or breaking stuff, as we call it, demanding excellence, you're never going to get there.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, so we'll go back and forth on a bunch of questions, and you can go off on tangents too, because you're here as the expert witness of your industry to educate and, no pun intended, infuse some other people into this topic. But when people come to you, Dustin, what is the number one? What do you typically see that they come with, and what's the first question they're asking you about their problems? What typically is it? Or is it like a multitude, or a, let me ask it differently. Is there a pretty consistent theme of when people come to you, go, Dustin, this is what I don't understand, or this is what I want you to do for me? Can you kind of put that into context for the audience?
Yeah, the number one thing is that they never have a plan. This comes down to my client who sold his business for $50 million to the person who's been saving for 40 years. They just don't have a plan in place.
Is it fear or knowledge or what?
I think there's a lack of knowledge out there. If you think about it, going through any of the education system from kindergarten all the way to if you got your college degree, they don't really teach you about this. And you now are in this motive that you come in, well, I got to save, right? I have to save for my IRA. I have to save in my 401k. But I don't know where I'm really going, and there's no path, let alone a multitude of things that you need to be looking at. Taxes, wealth transfer, asset protection, maximizing charitable gifts. It's not just about making smart decisions with your money, right? Which is the asset, management side. There's a plethora of other things that you need to be looking at. So they come and they say, well, what do? I have X amount of money. I sold my business for $40 million. I have $3 million and I want to retire. How do I do that? Because I'm afraid if I just take my money out, I'm going to run out of money. And that, by the way, that's not with someone who just has $1 million. That's someone who has 20 million. They have that same fear.
Or $2.
Or $2, yeah. Right? So it's always the planning that comes through it. Then we can figure out about investments and everything else, because the plan is what's going to dictate that.
So how do you calm a typical client down? First, just getting past that trepidation point. You know, what typically how do you make people feel comfortable with that understanding? Because they're looking to you, and you're this expert with all this knowledge about this particular field. How do you calm them down?
Really get to know them on a deep personal level. So understanding what are their values, what's important to them about money. Okay, who are the most important people in their life? What does their asset picture look like or not look like?
So you can relate back to your father and mother story then to pretty
absolutely
pretty fast.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You think about who are their important advisors, other advisors. When it comes to attorneys or accountants, what do they like to do? Because a lot of times you look at what they like to do, it comes into a lot of the goals that they have, right? Especially on the charitable side. And the biggest thing you can have is that you want to maximize your charitable gifts. Example, I'll give you a story. A client, she was giving a substantial amount of money to charity every single year, but in cash. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the problem is she wasn't maximizing anything from a tax
Deduction,
standpoint. Right? And there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. But even more, having even a more of an impact over time than if you just gave cash.
Yeah. It's funny you talked about that family. Let's go down that rabbit hole for a little bit. So, I'm in Vistage, and a lot of CEOs and other people are in different forums and business groups, and I don't care which group you're in. They always talk about the advisement of make sure you got that ecosystem built out. Mm-hmm. Okay, make sure you have your accountants, or maybe two, a personal and a business one, definitely an attorney. And usually, some sort of lawyer in some capacity. Insurance is one, and then the other one is always personal financial planner or investment banker or whatever, in that wealth management type thing. I thought it was funny because we did a workshop here, I don't know, a couple months ago, and pretty consistently around the table, everyone had all of them checked very comfortably except for your bucket. They all had a guy or a gal.
Sure.
But if you asked what and to paraphrase, if you took the percentage of comfort level versus the accountant side, where everyone felt like there were high numbers there because it's almost more actuarial, no pun intended.
Right.
But when it came to that, it was, well, how did you settle or how did you choose that person? Well, Guido's uncle Tio said that Frank's sister Mary has this guy named Dustin. You got to call him.
Right.
And I literally laughed because I thought of you and some other people that I respect in your industry going, holy crap. One of the most important parts of this ecosystem, not that yours is more important or less important, but one of the most important parts of that ecosystem, and you're betting it on a referral from, the back. It just felt awkward that here I was around a bunch of CEOs, and that was still the common denominator. Do you see that too?
Very common. And I've actually solved.
But why, Dustin? Why?
Because here's the deal. Typically, when people look at it, they think, okay, here's their accountant and their attorney. When you think about the hierarchy, then their Mercedes dealer, and then their personal financial planner. That's typically the ranking.
Sean, in his case, it's the dog breeder, and then it's you.
Right. So whatever you want to put in there, but that's typically how it is, and that has to change.
Okay.
Because and the way that we solve that is I built what I call the Fusion Family Office.
So please explain.
So here's what I did. I got sick of being this all siloed out and fragmented between all these different professionals. When you think about the attorneys.
So it turns out the issue I just brought up is one of your biggest nemesis then.
Big time.
Okay,
but easily solved here. I wouldn't say easily solved, but solved. And
it gave you that challenge.
It gave us the challenge where what I did is, if you were a good client right now and you needed a referral to an attorney or CPA, I go, okay, JJ, here you go. Go talk to Mike. Right? And then go back and come back to me whenever you figure what out that is, right? Well, that's fragmented, and that's a silo approach. So what I did is I recruited some of the best in the country, some of the best CPAs, insurance professionals, attorneys, whether they're corporate, estate planning attorneys, and I built this cohesive team. So what we do for our clients, take a business owner, they just sold their company, they're thinking about selling their company, and they're a client, and I've got that deep knowledge that we talked about. We'll once a quarter with 2 or 3 of these clients, I'll redact all the information. They all come into my office, certain professionals, and we'll go through their situation, right? We'll go through and ask about what do you see on the tax side and this is all about, by the way, quantity more than quality at this point. What do you see on the tax side that JJ, needs? What do you see on the asset protection side? What do you see on the wealth transfer side? Very charitable, individual here. What do you see that we can help on the charitable side? And everybody gives their opinion at that point of what they believe are the different strategies, and we narrow that down. We build an advanced plan. So it's not just Dustin out there building it or sending it off to somebody else and them kind of doing their own thing. We work as a cohesive team, and that's the Fusion Family Office. And it's a really, really powerful strategy for people that, again, most people that you talked about that team.
Yeah.
This is really a true cohesive team that's being built. And again, you talk about brand promises. That's right there is access to the Fusion Family Office. So it creates a level of planning that the client never would have received, even if I were to refer them out, because they didn't have multiple minds at a high level working together.
There comes a time when dreams become a reality, when you see your vision materialize into a true work of art. And the only way to get there is to choose a general contractor who shares that same vision and knows how to bring it to life. At Blue Wave, we aren't so big that we've forgotten where we've come from, and we aren't so small that we can't care for your projects regardless of their size. When your vision deserves safety, perfection, timeliness, and expertise in order to become a reality, trust Blue Wave to get it done right the first time.
So I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't challenge the paradigm a little bit.
Sure.
Then how do you give that fairly to your customer without over monetizing it? If I can ask, like, if there's proprietary secrets there, don't share. But I'm saying, you can't just give it away for free. Mm-hmm. So how do you monetize that and still give people that they're paying fairly?
Well, they've already engaged with me at that point as a client, right? So they're a client, and they're typically paying some type of financial planning fee or asset management fee.
Okay.
So once they're a client, then that situation, we put it all, we call it a wealth map on one page. All those things. And that's what we're redacted, of course, and we're walking them through the different professionals in that. So I know enough about tax and estate planning and everything else to be dangerous, but I will never, nor do I want to ever know as much as a CPA or an estate planning attorney. So these individuals are in there giving this information, and that's where we create a nice one-page advance plan. And this is where the entrepreneur mindset comes into, right?
Yeah.
Where it was really like, this is broken. I refer these people out. I like all these people. They're all quality, but no one's working together. People are trying to figure out who's doing what, and the client is getting fragmented advice. I'm doing one thing, and the estate planner is thinking about something else. The CPA is thinking about something else. It's really an issue. And I'll give you another example of a client. Right before I came into here, I got a message, an email saying, well, good thing that you brought up that tax saving strategy. It was actually on R&D tax credit.
Oh.
Okay. Well, he's getting back $250,000 because you can claw back 3 years of that. And that came from one of the people, a part of the Fusion Family Office, that had that idea and asking, well, I don't see anything about them claiming the R&D tax credit, not only the federal, but Arizona has a state level as well. Maybe we should look into this. Well, he wasn't doing it. The great thing, again, you can claw back 3 years worth of that. There's how you get the $250,000. So that would never have come up if I just sent him over to that CPA. It was, again, that CPA and everybody else throwing all the ideas and playing off each other and figuring out what's best for the client at that point and narrowing it down into a one-page advance plan.
Shoot, I had a question for you, and you got me so enthralled on what your topic was, I lost track. I know. So once you kind of switched to this model, or not switch, but the evolution kind of had a more solid base with this kind of holistic plan. Mm-hmm. What did you see immediately from your client base as far as their reaction?
Oh,
both. I'm sure financially it helped them, but then how did you feel the connection change?
I constantly I love our team.
Yeah,
I love our team.
Yeah,
that's what they say because they see it as a team. And this is a model that really, if you think about it, the family office model is available for people that are worth $100 million plus. And I said, well, how can we do that for people less than that? What if you're worth $2 million? What if you're worth $30 million? How can we bring that to the individual down here? So it's really a virtual capacity that we built this thing on. Whether you're in Arizona or Nevada or North Carolina, it doesn't really matter. It's an operation that we can bring together and build a true team because they don't feel like they have a team. Again, they feel like they have advisors when you're just fragmented, and that goes a long way to people. Because they know the type of advice that they're getting is really comprehensive, and not just my opinion on certain things or the CPAs or the attorneys.
That's good stuff. Before I go off on that one, is there anything else you want to share with the audience respective to that?
No.
As far as an enlightenment or any education piece that all of us neophytes don't understand?
I just think the fact is that people, when they talk about comprehensive planning, they have to understand what that truly is. And if you're, again, I'm what I consider myself or our clients as a personal CFO. If your CPA, your attorney, your advisor, wealth manager, whatever you want to call it, is not talking on a quarterly basis about your financial plan, then I see an issue. And that's one of the red flags that when we ask that, nobody ever says they're doing that.
Yeah.
But they go, I want that.
All right, all you listeners, quarterly, or else come talk to Dustin. Talk a little bit about. I know you get featured nationally in all sorts of publications because, again, your drive, your intuition, just your smarts, your entrepreneurship. What is that? What is that like for you? I mean, take apart the notoriety and all that kind of stuff, but I know you're passionate about that. What has that led to your own kind of journey through getting? You're not just this little guy in Phoenix anymore. You're nationally known and speak on a lot of topics. But what has that done for you and for your client base?
The first time I got in Forbes, it was like kind of a dream come true, right? I remember I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in Forbes. My life is going to change. And
not as much as when you had your kids.
Right. Yeah. The phone didn't ring, right? But, I built up a reputation through, again, Forbes, U.S. News and World Report. But I think one that really hit home when I talked about with the clients was about a year and a half ago, I was featured in the Huffington Post. And it was on more of an expose on entrepreneurship, about me as an entrepreneur, which, again, really hit home with me because I'm like, well, yeah, I'm an entrepreneur. I just chose finance because I have, obviously, my story in the past, what my passion is. And I think what that's done is it shaped my mindset rather than think, I'm not just an advisor, I'm an entrepreneur. When I'm an entrepreneur, I'm thinking about not just how to be a wealth manager, but I'm also thinking about how can I make my clients happier, right? How is that in client engagement? I don't want just clients that are, just like you said, like most people feel, well, I'm not unhappy, but I'm not, happy. I'm just kind of so-so. I don't want clients like that. I want clients that are completely just raving fans. But that's not on their side, it's on our side. So we're constantly thinking about, how do we do that? How do we get better engagement with clients? How do we have better service? Are there people that we need to hire? Are there processes that we need to put in place? How do we take better care? That's how the Fusion Family Office started was, well, I only know so much, but how can I provide more value to the client? So that notoriety really led to more of a trailblazing mindset. One of our values was like, well, how do we just become better? Well, okay, you got to when it comes to publications and notoriety, you got to the pinnacle of Forbes and U.S. News and all that stuff, and that's fine. But how do you translate that into actionable activity that you're taking for your clients? And that's what really, I think, pushed me. What are the differentiating activities that you're doing as a company to bring that to the next level?
Well stated. And the thing that kept coming to mind is, again, thinking about our core audience, which is primarily the AEC world. And for those listeners, I'm trying to get you to try to describe it to them of, because we self-identify not as entrepreneurs usually. We self-identify, like you said, I'm a financial planner, I'm an accountant, I'm a general contractor, I'm a tradesman. If you can look at yourself in the mirror and describe yourself as an entrepreneur versus one of those aforementioned titles, what kind of liberties do you think that gives you? And because I heard it, you described it to yourself, but how do you encourage someone else to think through that lens? And then what does it mean to them? Because I think people just need that inspiration. Like, it's not that bad. Take the jump. Right. But I'd love to hear how you advise people to say, how do you think like that?
It's definitely a mindset shift. And it's not that, whether you're a small business owner and you think of yourself as whatever title, right? If you're running a business, right?
You're already an entrepreneur.
You're already there, but it's that accidental entrepreneur, right? It used to just be called you're a business owner.
Right. I wrote that down. Good.
You used to just be I'm a business owner, but now this sexy title of entrepreneur came along, many years ago, and that's where like this craze came down. But I think what you have to think about, what is that mindset I'm trying to bring to the table? Because the mindset is no longer I just want to be the best at what I do and be that specialist inside of my business. I have to think bigger about my business. And that doesn't mean that you want to go have a $50 million business.
No, bigger means a lot of different things. Agreed.
Right. Yeah. It's just, well, maybe I want to offer a better service platform or better, engagement with clients or whatever that may be. That's how you have to think about it. That's what the mindset, the shift does. Because if you can bring that, it's going to create this level of creativity that you have in your business that you will never have got just as being that specialist. It just really starts to open your mind and it becomes exciting to you. You're like, well, I already am doing a really good job. I'm really successful, but maybe I'm working more than I wanted to. How do I bring somebody in to help, take some of the workload off from me so I can think more high level rather than just being in the business, right? That type of mindset is tough. And you're right, there is a leap when you start, building a payroll and having more expenses. But if you can get into that mindset, it's just freeing. It really is.
So in that context then, Dustin, I was thinking, again, getting back to breaking down the the notion of you being wealth management, financial advisor, those kind of things. Are you finding more customers, clients, partners, whatever, let's that they're now coming to you for more of those types of things, back because of the way you run that family, the Fusion Wealth family type
Office,
thing, the office? Are you seeing more and more of that? Is actually more your role? I mean, it's almost, I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's almost like the financial piece, that wealth management, that's the chassis, right? That's the given when they work with you. It's all those other things that are helping them grow interpersonally, professionally, whatever, even ecumenically, I don't care, whatever that is. You're offering kind of that turnkey service. Is that really the transformational piece that you're seeing with a lot of what you're trying to do?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of we've attracted so many business owners because of it, as well as clients because of exactly what you just said.
Okay.
But the mindset, they go, well, this guy thinks like me, right? he knows what it's like to have a payroll. He knows what it's like, to have the ups and downs of the business. He knows what it's like to start out and you're working 80 hours a week. You're not making any money. It's like,
you look and go, oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah, I'm making $1 an hour because I'm working 80 hours a week and not making any money, right? So I think there's this familiarity that comes with it and this comfort because they're working with somebody who understands them, not just their personal situation, but them professionally and how to actually morph all that together and be truly impactful. And when I changed that mindset, again, our clients became happier. Yeah. We started attracting different types of clients, the different services that we got, some of the notoriety that you've talked about, we started getting. And again, I always tell people, it's almost like you have all this stuff in your subconscious, but you start identifying things that could be very impactful for your business. It's like when you get a flat tire, for the next week, everybody has a flat tire for some reason, right? You want to go buy a red car. All you see is red cars. It's amazing what you start to attract when you start thinking differently about your business.
Talk about, again, you've got a wonderful insight to this, both through your own success and those around you. Because what's that old saying, the attraction, right? But the successful habits, as you've interviewed all sorts of people in and out and all those kind of things, what do you consistently see on successful habits?
Well, I can speak to what I've done and what I've kind of went through. And I would tell people the most important thing I have that they may want to think about is organizing your day the night before.
Okay.
So
do tell.
I'm very fanatical about it now because it's very important, right? So
he said fanatical, everyone.
Yes. You get up in the morning.
He may be a little OCD. I don't know.
A little bit, maybe. But here's how I used to get up in the morning. I get up in the morning, and you had your meetings or whatever the things you had to do, and I always kind of felt like I was running as fast as I could. I wasn't really getting as far as I thought I could. It was just getting through the day, and sure, I was having success, but like everybody, I'm putting all these fires out. So I took the approach like 7 or 8 years ago where I started organizing the night before. So before I would leave the office or before I'd go to bed, I'd start to just structure my day. And there's some key components of what I would do. Is I would put the 3 most important things that I wanted to accomplish.
Before you go there.
Yeah.
How did you do it on a time basis?
Time basis.
Okay, so this is all about time right now.
This is all about time.
Keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to make sure.
I'm going to take my calendar. Okay. And I'm going to look already what's in there, meetings and things like that. But I'm also going to take the 3 most important things I need to do. And I'm going to schedule those in my calendar, whether that takes 15 minutes, an hour, whatever it may be. And I'm going to put those in the morning, okay? And that's very important for the fact that we all know throughout the day, all those fires, they start to happen, things go wrong. So you give your higher self ability to get them done if you do them in the morning. But I don't allow myself to get those 3 things done every single day. I expect that sometimes that may get moved back a half an hour or I have to put a fire out. But what it allows me to do is all night when I go to bed, I have it all laid out what I'm going to do. I wouldn't recommend this at first. It takes time, but I do it in 15-minute increments, okay, for the day. What I would tell everybody, you might want to think about just saying, look, I'm going to organize my day. I'm going to put the 3 most important things in my calendar. I'm going to put them in the morning. And that's what I'm going to do. And then you start with that.
When you said don't start with 15, what's the advice? Start like half hour, an hour block?
Start a half an hour blocks and block out in half hours. If that's too much, you can do an hour. It takes time to kind of get used to it.
In your own cadence.
Your own cadence. But here's what you do when you organize your day the night before and you put your 3 in there. When you go to bed, you're subconsciously, I'm telling you, you're thinking about these things. You're not tossing and turning, but your mind is thinking through these. You wake up and you don't have to think about what you have to do for the day. You just go. and you get everything done. You'll be amazed how much you'll get done in a day that you weren't before. And if you guess what, there's going to be a million fires that day, right? But you got the 3 most important things done more than probably a lot of people out there like, well, I'm really busy and I feel like I'm not getting where it's because they're constantly putting out fires, but they're not getting the most important things done. Okay? That was when anybody that comes in the company and we hire them, the first thing for the first 30 days, we make them just give us their, top 3 things they're going to get done. We don't really monitor it. We're not doing any of that. We're just saying, tell us what your 3 things so they get into the habit of doing it. And it's amazing to see the efficiency and how much you can actually get done in your day when you start to organize it the night before. Because again, you usually get up and you're fragmented. Like I have 3 kids. I get up and it's like chaos. Right? Trying to get them ready for school, get them out the door. I was trying to respond to an email or take a call. It's just insane.
Yeah.
But again, I've already scheduled the chaos in there, and I know I just hit the ground running, and I don't think for the whole day.
Yeah, you're managing risk being versus being risk averse.
Right. But again, you not having to think about what you're going to do and just go do it is absolutely the most freeing thing that you can do. And it's one of the easiest things that doesn't matter whether you're a business owner or you're an executive or whatever you are, if you do that and you actually do that over time and get that habit, you will be amazed how much stuff you'll actually get done.
Good one. Well, what's next on the Dustin G list of successful habits?
Well, I think, again, one of our core values is getting 1% every day, better every day.
Oh.
And
is that like an atomic habit type thing almost?
Yeah, I mean, it's part of it. So when I started, when I started the company, I said, what are my core values? And there were 6 of them. And I started doing things like demand excellence, trailblazing mindset, get better, 1% better every single day, be tenacious, elevate together, right?
Ooh.
We started doing these core values. And I said, well, what am I about? Because that's what I want the company to be about. And I now hire on those values. So they got to have the skill set and things like that. But the last interview, what they don't know, is 100% a value-based interview. And if they meet those values, it's phenomenal to see when they come to the company what they actually can do in the company. And by the way, I'm reinforcing those every single day because that's just naturally who I am, right? So that hiring on the value side becomes very, very impactful, and it becomes this living, breathing organism where I talk about demand excellence, where we kind of joke about, well, hey, I broke that today. That's okay, right? Having your processes, your scalable infrastructure. Yeah. Well, great. We want you to break it. We're going to get better. We're going to get that 1% better. It's really a fun environment that it creates, and everybody feels just as a team, really. So,
can you do that? Okay, so here's an interesting question for you. Can you do that with your client base as well? And should you?
We do incorporate our values. One thing that when we talk about,
are you going to be transactional, or are you going to practice what you preach? Is
right.
kind of what I'm asking.
Right. No, with our clients, we do engage. If I were to take a survey of my clients, I would say that they're very familiar with those values. Whether I've actually ever told them any of that is one case, but a lot of them already have those values. And one situation where you talk a lot about when we engage with the clients, we say, well, we're in this for the long term. One of our brand promises is we treat you like family. Mm-hmm. That means we're in here for a long-term relationship. That goes back to elevate together. So it's not just the company internally elevating together, it's us and the clientele as well.
Anything more on the successful habits that you feel like you really want to share with the audience?
Well, that will get 1% better every day. So typically, I always tell people maybe it makes sense to every 30 to 60 days. What's one thing you can work on every single day? And that incorporates back into the 3 most important things.
Yeah.
I want to get better at marketing or whatever it may be, okay? That's in the plan every single day on one thing, whether it's reading a chapter in a book, whether it's hiring an outsourced help, whatever it may be, I'm constantly striving to become better. And I think as an entrepreneur, it's very important that you do that. I think that as an individual in general, personally or professionally, trying to get better every single day at something, and then measuring that is very important. Rather than just
measurement. Yeah. So what advice do you have on measurement, Dustin?
Well, I think if, for example...
Because I think a lot of people struggle with that.
Measurement's tough because it creates accountability, right?
Novel. Yeah.
That's the issue with it. But the issue is that you have to create for yourself an environment where you're okay with being accountable and keeping other people accountable. That's where that demand, for us at least, that's where the demand excellence comes in, right? When we talk about breaking things, it's keeping accountability for making sure that we're all rising to a certain level. So, KPIs and key performance indicators, things like that you've heard. But here's the difference. So our brand promise on, having access to the Fusion Family Office, we treat you like family. There are actual KPIs that we have that, are we doing that? Are we living up to our brand promises? We measure that. So we know whether we're actually staying on top of that, what our efficiency is on that. So reinforces to the client. Not that the client knows that, but we internally, that's part of our purpose, part of our vision, what we want to do. So we make sure that we measure that.
Okay.
There comes a time when dreams become a reality, when you see your vision materialize into a true work of art. And the only way to get there is to choose a general contractor who shares that same vision and knows how to bring it to life. At Bleu Wave, we aren't so big that we've forgotten where we've come from, and we aren't so small that we can't care for your projects regardless of their size. When your vision deserves safety, perfection, timeliness, and expertise in order to become a reality, trust Bleu Wave to get it done right the first time.
Another topic I want to go down because I think so many people, especially in this space, and you and I had put this kind of on our little cheat sheet, is helping entrepreneurs and business owners and individuals, for that matter, understand how to scale and grow. Mm-hmm. I'm sure everyone comes to you with that same problem. It's the glass ceiling. I've hit my glass ceiling, Dustin. Help me. Talk through some of the things that you've seen and the advice you can give, and just what are some learnings that you have that can just give people that impetus and support that they need, or advice, because I think you just hear it all the time.
Yeah. I think this is a tough thing to find out, but what is your multiplying factor for your business? Okay.
So you're saying that's your starting question.
That's your starting question.
Okay.
It's one of them. I would say that brand promise is a big thing.
Okay.
Who are you selling? Who are you selling whatever to, or whatever service?
Right.
Okay. What is the brand promise? How are you measuring that? What are your differentiating activities? So let's start with differentiating activities. We talked about Southwest Airlines, for example.
Okay.
Everybody knows them. That's
Right.
an easy one. One of the things that makes them successful, a few things, are their differentiating activities. So what they do is, they don't want advanced reservations. You have no seating. You're pretty much fighting everybody for the seats, right? And you're understanding that because it's more cost effective typically to go with Southwest. But how does Southwest pull that off, right? They fly point to point rather than having a hub and spoke. So that's safe. They use second tier airports a lot, so their landing fees. They use one airplane. They don't use multiple airplanes. So what does that do? Well, every pilot can fly every plane. They save on travel costs. They can buy all their parts in bulk to fix those. And by the way, how do they reinforce that? Well, they have a quirky, fun culture that helps you forget about all the other shortcomings that they have, right?
Except like Christmas time.
Right, except at Christmas time. But it's things like that. What is your company? It's not these vague or esoteric things. It's what are you doing as a company every day, and how are you doing it that differentiates you? When you talk about the multiplying factor, I think the one I like is Outback Steakhouse, okay? And I would preface anybody, say, if you have a multiplying factor, don't tell anybody, because it's really the secret sauce to what you have. But you want something that's giving you a 10, 20, 30, 50 time, over your advantage over your competition. So here's what Outback Steakhouse does, right? Everybody knows Outback. So what the average tenure for a manager in the restaurant industry is about 6 months. So
that's short.
6 months. So they had an issue where they're like, well, how do we solve this? So what they do for a new manager, this is how they used to do it, by the way. What they would do is they said, look, if you're a new manager, we're gonna make you invest $25,000, okay, to become a manager. The first 3 years, we are going to train you, okay, and we're gonna pay you a competitive salary.
Okay.
In year 4 and 5, we're gonna let you run your own shop, right, your own restaurant. Based on performance metrics, if you hit those in year 5, at the end of year 5, we are going to give you a $100,000 bonus. So $75,000 return
on your $20,000.
On your $20,000. Okay.
Okay.
So at that point, they're going to pay that over the next 4 years.
Right.
However, If you sign on for another 5 years, they're going to pay you that $100,000 up front. Okay. Also, if you sign on, they're going to give you some type of stock incentive plan as well. So the thing was, what did that do? Okay. Well, before I actually go to that, 90% of people stayed on for years 5 through 10. 80% stayed on 10 plus years. You think about that comparison to the average of 6 months. Well, that increased, the actual product that they were doing, consistency, the environment across the board. And that's how they became the third largest restaurant chain in the United States, because they created consistency of service and product because they were able to keep those managers. So what's your X factor when you're thinking about your business, that there's some issue or some problem, whatever that may be? What bothers you the most? You go to these different networking events, and there's these one-off, where you get these little, micro sessions where everybody's, trying to solve some, issue. If you can solve that and have some type of factor, that gives you a really big advantage.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking, because I'm trying to go, you use multiplying factor in more of a kind of larger holistic thing. I'm thinking about a lot of business owners that want the multiplying factor for, selling to a strategic or PE or something, and the true multiplier of EBITDA. Yeah. But the theories don't change, right? I mean, you still have to find that differentiator. So again, I ask you, because you've represented so many people, those that have done better than most, what are the consistent things that you see from those leaders in that multiplying factor? I mean, you gave 2 great examples, but I'm asking, is there any consistency or any trends that you're seeing with the way they're wired or what they're doing and that multiplying factor, Dustin?
Well, I think a lot of the business owners, they are definitely wired in a different way. They're very enthusiastic, high energy people, probably stubborn, and they just keep going. They get knocked down, they keep going, but they are definitely a type of individual that's constantly learning to get better. Okay. But the thing I really would, if I had to pinpoint it, when I think about, that stat that we talked about, but the 96%, never get above $1 million. There's really 3 things I think that all 3 of those businesses, those people, do really well. Well, it's not just them, but people they have in the business, is they have a really scalable infrastructure, so their operations and processes are really well dialed in. Okay. So whether you're 2-man or a 3-man shop, it's something that you should be focusing on now, because if you can do it at 3, you need to make sure that you can do it at 10. They're really good at marketing, right? They can market themselves really, really well. And again, everybody's blessed in different ways with doing that. If you're not, you should hire someone to do that eventually down the road, or outsource that. But leadership is the third thing that I've seen, is that they are really good leaders, or if they're not, they hire somebody who can help them with that aspect. So between marketing, having good scalable infrastructure, and leadership, I would say those are probably the 3 most common things I see. Those businesses that have scaled up significantly and sold out, they had all 3 of those things. The people who don't get above that $1 million, they may do good at 1, potentially even 2, but they don't have all 3.
So take the ones that don't want to sell, usually like a family business, where it's like a 3rd, 4th generation trade contractor or somebody like that. Right. Do you see that those 3 qualities, do they change or get inverted in the order of importance at all?
Nope. I get a lot of clients.
It's unilateral, right?
Yeah, I get a lot of clients in that scenario that you talked about, where that's not what they want to do. They have a lifestyle business. They don't want to sell. Maybe the kids are going to eventually take it over. It hasn't really changed. It doesn't change. It's just they have no idea whether they want to sell or they're going to sell. Maybe they don't. It doesn't change. Right. They're good at those 3 things. Again, if they're not, they have people that are.
So speaking of which, there's a lot of people. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring it up. Things have been good here in the valley for construction wise for quite a while, and in the foreseeable future. But I see a lot of burnout, a lot of people that are just they're tapped, or take us old farts that were still around 10 years ago when we survived the recession, right? And came back and said, hey, when it gets going good again, I'm finally going to sell or get out. Right. What advice do you have for those people out there right now? As far as in the current market segment, what are the steps they should be looking at from your perspective? Because what I'd love to do is have Dustin give some advice today of, I don't want the scenario that you gave before is, hey, I went and sold, now what do I do? Right. So if you could just speak to that.
I think so there's a high proportion of people who do sell or pass to the next generation who were very unsatisfied the way it went. They weren't happy, whether it was an earn-out deal with the kids or they sold to a PE, whatever it may be. They have a lot of regret behind it, and it was because there wasn't preparation done before. Okay, so whether you were worth $1 million or $100 million, okay, there's 4 things that we've talked about today. They're always the 4 things that everybody cares about: taxes, asset protection, transferring your wealth to your heirs, right, and maximizing charitable contributions. Those are always the same. So you need to make sure ahead of time, before you ever sell, before you have a term sheet or anything, or passing on to the next generation, that you've put a team in place to help you solve all those issues. Okay. Right? Again, when you look at a lot of these guys that are selling or passing it down, they don't have too much experience. It's a handshake deal with a lot of the kids and things like that. But you got to make sure that you just have the team in place, asking the right types of questions. And if you don't know the types of questions, you need to bring that team in to help, just make you think about that. I mean, it's really their sole decision on what they're going to do, but it's amazing to see the difference in, I think, confidence that they have. Confidence that they get when they're talking to a $1 billion, PE firm, or even their family members. I've had at my, conference table 3 generations of family members, and seeing the matriarch and patriarch so happy and excited and confident about how they're transitioning everything down to the kids. And it's really, really fun to see that confidence level rise. But when they're just shooting from the hip and they don't have a team in place, that's the problem. Yeah. And again, you better have a cohesive team where everybody's working together, because if you're not, you're going to get fragmented advice, and there's going to be some type of gap that you're probably going to miss.
And I would assume your advice is the same as what we kind of talked earlier. Don't go to one. Get those people on your ecosystem wheel all involved in that discussion, right? Everything from tax to you guys to your attorney to whatever. I mean, don't just go to one opinion.
No, and here's the deal. You ask, if you're going to go to an attorney, a estate planning attorney, or a corporate attorney, or a CPA, or a wealth manager, ask them, well, how often will you, if you have a CPA already, we don't just replace your CPA. We bring them into the fold. Yeah. But you ask them, well, how often do you talk to the rest of my team? They're going to look at you with the biggest blank stare. Yeah. Right? How often will you talk to my CPA, about, things? Again, well, what do you mean? That's what you're going to get. And that's what you don't want to hear. And by the way, if they're not currently doing that, you should ask them, hey, do you think it would make sense for you to maybe talk to my CPA twice a year, my estate planning attorney twice a year at least, just to create that engagement? So you can do that with your existing team if they're willing to do that. If they're not, you might want to think about taking a different approach.
Covered a lot of ground. And usually in the last section, I always like to kind of go back to giving the floor more to you in kind of this free-spirited way. What haven't I asked you, or what haven't you talked about that you think that you just really want to share with the audience? Either about you, the services you offer, the industry you're in, or just something philosophical. I don't care.
Right. Well, I like our industry as a whole to be above the Mercedes dealership relationship. So I would say that, accountability of what I talked about, like with making your team, work as actual team, right? And not in these siloed approaches, is going to be in your most beneficial interest for sure. And I think the world is changing, right? When you think about AI and you think about blockchain, you think about all these things that have come to the forefront. If you're not thinking about those things, you should be. The chat GPTs, all these things. How can you incorporate these things into your business? We ask ourselves these questions every single day. But again, it's more about, well, how can we do that? Because we're trying to improve what we do for our services for the client, for the experience. So everybody hopefully should be thinking about that. But most importantly, you should be thinking about your professionals should be hopefully thinking about that. Because if you're not on the bleeding edge, again, things move so quick. We went through the last few years where things we never thought would ever happen, right? Like it hadn't happened in 100 years, but not even to that standpoint. You never know what's going to happen. You got to make sure that your team is really on the forefront of everything technology-wise. And again, I think from a service standpoint, things in our industry, I believe it has to change into comprehensive planning rather than, well, I have a guy that manages my money, right?
Exactly.
And that's really what the norm is. Well, I got an investment guy, he does a little financial planning, but he doesn't really do too much else.
Now, it's funny, this whole hour being in your business, I haven't asked you a single thing about the market or any investing or anything like that. But just at a high level, as we get ready to sign off, what everyone's kind of got this discomfort of what's happening with the Fed over the next year and everything. But can you give kind of a blanket statement, just because you are so buried in this day in and day out, just for the layperson, what do you see as a trend maybe over the next 24 months?
Yeah, well, it all comes back to the Fed, right? I mean, I think we saw last year, whether it was corporate earnings, industrial production, consumer spending, unless the Fed was going to say, look, we're going to slow down or stop, there was not going to really be a catalyst. Now, again, the funny thing is, this might be the most predictable recession ever, or is it, right? Because you can't go a day without someone saying, oh, the recession's coming. But and maybe it is, and maybe it's not. But I always say, like, when has everybody ever been right about anything?
True.
Right? And recessions are always this thing that are unknown. So again, maybe there's going to be one, maybe there's not. Maybe there's a shallow one. Who knows at this point? But what I would tell you is history is on our side when it comes to the markets. If you go back to all the way from like 1987 with like Black Monday, the Asian monetary crisis, 2008, markets have roughly on average in these types of scenarios dropped 33%, but they also over the next 12 months came back 43%. So they're typically very quick crashing, very quick, rising as well. But you got to remember, recession is a lagging indicator. The market's the most bleeding edge thing you could have. So that typically, again, implodes first and then recovers first. It was kind of like, we were still in a recession for years after 08, but the market started going back up and people are saying, well, how's the market at all-time highs? And I'm not back to even, right? Because again, it's that forward-looking mindset. And again, a recession is a very lagging thing. Yeah. Unemployment is a very lagging thing, but these are the hot topic buttons that you hear out there. I would tell people when the Fed, it's not about the rate hike itself. It's when the Fed starts to say, look, we think we can pause. We think we can slow down, because monetary policy is lagging, right?
Yeah.
It's just like you think about it. It's this wave that's behind. They raise rates, they raise rates, raise rates. There's this wave built that's going behind the Fed. They pause, and we don't know if it's a little wave or it's a tsunami coming in. And that's the issue when they have monetary policy. But we're going through one of the most aggressive rate hikes cycles in history. So I would tell people to really watch the Fed and see when they begin to slow completely. Or it's really about the words of saying, well, we think we can begin to slow down more or pause. That's a catalyst I think everybody should be looking for. Until that changes, it's hard to really get feet within the market long term while the Fed's in this aggressive hike cycle. So
I think you stated that very well.
Thanks.
You should run for office someday. All right. Well, can't say enough good things about Dustin Giannangelo. Thanks for being a guest on the program today. For those of you that want to reach out to him, he's CEO at Fusion Wealth Management. They're, I think, are you still in the same location?
Yeah, 40th Street in Camelback.
Yep. He's right in the heart of all the cool stuff that goes on in the heart of Phoenix, at least in the business community. Wonderful guy. And if you didn't pick up on his drive in this podcast, just know that when you get him privately, it's even better. And he really does look out for you. So I just, thanks again, Dustin, for being on. And what I really like about it is something different than we typically talk about. So appreciate your time today.
Thanks, JJ. Appreciate it.
Until the next episode, tune in again.
You've been listening to the Mac and Blue Show, brought to you by Torrey Contracting and Blue Wave General Contracting. Be sure to subscribe to the Mac and Blue podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Follow Robert Johnson and JJ Levensky on LinkedIn and Instagram. Tune in live every first and third Thursday at 3 p.m. as we continue to introduce you to the people building Arizona. Walt Disney said, "You can dream, create, design, and build the most wonderful place in the world, but it requires people to make the dream a reality." Until next time, make it a great day.